The world was pretty shocked last week when it saw the huge numbers, estimated to be around about 48,000 individuals from not only Morocco but northern Africa that surged onto Spanish land, otherwise known as Ceuta, which, albeit is not on the Spanish mainland, is very much part of sovereign Spain. And the concerns were why this happened and why in such big numbers. And this could probably be triggered by the Supreme Court in Spain, not only granting asylum to undocumented individuals that may seek asylum in Spain, which would number around about 500,000 to potentially 1.5 million, but especially to those that would arrive by sea rather than necessarily by land. This is obviously gravely concerning for many, many countries that are separated from Northern Africa, but which is the general launch point by many to get into countries that are on the Mediterranean, such as Sicily, Spain, for example, but even to France. Although obviously the journey by boat to France would be significantly longer. But all countries, including Greece, and are members of the Schengen Agreement, are obviously concerned that once individuals arrive in their country, they then have freedom of reign to pretty much travel almost anywhere. Despite the fact that systems are in place, these have been failing dismally in terms of documenting and then controlling individuals moving from one border to another. So one of the most immediate concerns was of those individuals that had crossed into Ceuta, obviously taking boats potentially to get to the Spanish mainland. A good number of those initial individuals within that immigrant surge have returned to Morocco. However, the Moroccan government had also released some 3,000 prisoners out into general population. And it's concerning that there may be a large number of those individuals that have now made it to Spanish mainland territories. The concern from there is those individuals potentially getting into France, getting into the United Kingdom, and moving as freely as they possibly can. And although the Frontex system, which has been used for the last few years to try and biometrically check these individuals, it isn't robust enough to stop individuals moving from one country to another. And the Frontex system is being overhauled to not just take a fingerprint biometric log of all of those individuals, but to include biometrics, including facial recognition as well, which can then be supported by various different countries. But for individuals trying to get into the UK, yes, inevitably there will be a small proportion trying to do so. But many that are coming from Algeria, from Libya, from Morocco for that matter, are more likely, due to the language differences, choose to change or stay within Spain or change to France or even to Italy. The biggest challenge is really for the European authorities to try and track these individuals once they've arrived on the lands of Spain or France or Greece for that matter, because the technology is just simply not supporting it to the level that it needs to be. It's very good at documenting, say, Brits going on their holidays or even those that are in certain countries on student visas. But illegal immigrants and those that have jumped from boats are less likely to potentially, especially in large numbers, to have been captured by the authorities of that country to be able to document who they are, where they're from, and what they may be seeking. Now, added to which there is a huge unemployment rate in Morocco that has probably surged and certainly incentivized many of the individuals to come to Europe. But once they're into, say, Spain, if they choose to cross the borders into France through the Pyrenees, they will be able to do so reasonably easily. And there are only spot checks that ultimately are done in various key locations, but the borders, due to the Schengen Agreement, are exceptionally weak. And therefore, the documentation or the logging of these individuals is going to be sparse at best. So, this is something that all European countries are trying to address more seriously and with better technology to try and prevent this from happening and try and manage the influx of individuals for two reasons. Number one, their freedom of movement, but secondly, to return them to the initial country that they've arrived into. Now, what is kind of interesting is the about turn of many illegal immigrants coming into the United Kingdom. And it's being documented, particularly by the National Crime Agency, that there are illegal immigrants that have come into the UK, met with an adverse reaction, and are now choosing to return to continental Europe. Now, the controls, albeit as weak as they are, preventing individuals getting into the UK, are even weaker for those choosing to leave the UK. And a number of organized crime organizations, particularly within the trafficking sector, are offering illegal immigrants opportunities to be able to be returned back into Europe from the United Kingdom at around about £1,000 to £1,200. One of the hardest things is for many of the governments to try and deal in isolation with trafficking networks. And it needs to be a more joined up process, and it needs a considerable amount of resource and capability thrown at it. We know that organized crime is generally behind it, and there are even hostile state actors like Iran that are now confirmed to have been involved in the facilitation of certain trafficking routes, particularly into the UK, of their own agents and personnel that have perhaps more malicious intent than most illegal immigrants and are not simply here for economic advantages. So where we need to address this is in adopting a far more agreeable and effective biometric system for logging individuals, and those that cannot account for who they are or where they're from should be logged immediately. And this is going to include a number of different agencies, from law enforcement through to intelligence agencies, and possibly, where resource isn't available, the military, to try and heed these individuals moving around without any kind of controls within Europe, but especially here into the UK.